Hey guys, in this tutorial I'm going to show how to use the Impressionist Photoshop action. So the way the action works is that you just load up your photo in Photoshop, you run the action, and this is the effect that it will create for you. So this is the photo I'll use in the tutorial. You can follow along if you want. I'll put a link down to it below. Alright, I'll show you a few more examples and then we'll jump into Photoshop. Alright, let's get started. Alright, the first thing we need to make sure of is that your Photoshop file is all set up correctly. So the first thing you want to check, and this step's important, is the size of your photo. So if you go to image size, okay, you can see the size of my photo here, 1200 by 1800. So what you want to do, whatever dimension is higher, so the height here is the higher dimension, I'm going to scale this up to 3200 pixels, alright? Now you can scale this anywhere, a good range is say anywhere between 2800 to 4000 pixels, alright? But this example here, this was at a height of 3200 pixels, and this just ensures that when you're going from photo to photo, the drips and the brush strokes are a consistent size. So if I was using a photo of say a height of 5000 pixels, okay, much larger photo, the drips are going to be much smaller and the brush strokes are going to be much smaller, alright? And if I use a much smaller photo of say a height of 1500 pixels, the drips are going to be very large and the brush strokes much larger. So this is 3200 or anywhere between 2800 to 4000 is a good size to work at. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to leave 3200, click OK. Alright. Next, go back into the image menu, go to mode, and just check you're working in RGB color mode and 8 bits a channel is selected. Alright. Next, what we need to do is load up the brushes that were included in the download. So if you just hit B on the keyboard or access the brush tool here and then right click anywhere over your photo, what we want to do here is now load up the action brushes. So you can either replace your existing brushes that are in the panel here, or we can just load them in to the existing stack. So if you click on this icon and go to load brushes and select the Impressionist brushes there, okay, and they will appear just down the bottom here. Alright. Actually, what I might do to clean this up, I might just replace all these brushes. So I'll just replace this time. Alright, so there they are there. Alright, so when you've loaded up the brushes, always just make sure that when you're loading up brushes for Photoshop actions is that the brush opacity, is at 100%, flow 100, and these two icons are turned off. Alright. So next what we need to do is load up the pattern file that was included in the download. So if you just hit G on the keyboard or access the paint bucket tool here, and then up the top here, click on this box here and select pattern. Alright, and then click on this arrow. So this will load up the, sorry, it's chopped off a bit there, but this will load up the Photoshop patterns. So these are just the default ones. So I just want to load up the one that I need for the action. So if you click on this icon and go to load patterns, then select the Impressionist pattern. Okay, and it's just this one pattern here. Okay. Now another quick way to load up the brushes and pattern file is that I'll just bring this over here. So when you've unzipped the file, there'll be these three files here. You got the action, the brushes, and the pattern. So with Photoshop open, all you need to do is actually just double click on this brushes file, okay? And then that will load up. You can see it's loaded up twice now. But that's a quick way to load the brushes. And then you can just double click here on the pattern file, and that will load up the pattern, okay? So that's just a quick way of loading the brushes and the pattern. Okay, so that's done. The next step, and this is very important, is if you hit Y on the keyboard or access the Art History Brush tool here, okay, make sure your settings match mine at the top here. So opacity 100, these two icons need to be turned off. Style, this is very important, make sure that is set to DAB. Area 0, tolerance 0, okay? Now the last step here is to load up the action. So if you go to the window menu and go to actions, all right, the actions panel will show up. Click on this icon and go to load actions and select the Impressionist by 7 style action there. Okay. Now again, the other way is if you just double click on the Impressionist action file when you've unzipped it, and that'll just pop up here. Okay. Alright, so when you've loaded up the action, you twirl the folder open and you've got all these here. Now the one you're interested in, okay, is this Impressionist one here. All these here you don't need to touch, okay. This one here, sharpen result, you can just use that action to run after you've run the Impressionist action, which is just sharpen up your details, but I'll show you how to use that. Alright, so a quick double check of everything. So if I go to image size, my image size is good. If I hit Y, all my settings here are good. Alright, I've loaded up the brushes, I've loaded up the pattern file, so everything's ready to go. Now what's also important is that you don't rename this main folder here. Okay, if you rename that folder, the action won't work at all. Okay, so it's important that you remember that. Alright, so to use the action, all we do is select the Impressionist action here, have it selected, and then we hit the play button. Okay, and then the action will start working. So there are two steps during the action playback. Okay, the action will stop and it will prompt you to do a couple of things. So I'll just get to that first pop-up window and I'll talk to you about what to do there. Alright, so here's the first step, and this message window will pop up. I won't bother about reading through this, I'll just explain to you what to do. This is just for your reference. Alright, so what you need to do here is, when you get this first message, is click stop, okay? And you'll notice that the action is paused, alright? And we have this brush that's selected. So what you want to do here is now just start clicking, let's zoom in a bit, start clicking, holding and dragging around your photo, and that will start revealing it, okay? Just like this. Now you can, for the first part of the tutorial, I'm going to show you, there's two different styles of this action. You can either have it that you just reveal a small section like this, and then sort of drips will, so let me get up an example. So this frog example here, you can see how I've just revealed a section of the photo, and we have these drips that fall away from the edges. So that is the first style, and then the second style is that it just covers the entire photo like this, all right? So the first part here, I'll just reveal a section, just like this, all right? Okay. Now what you want to do here, when you have finished brushing, okay, and I'll show you in the next part of the tutorial how to, quickly fill in the entire photo so you don't need to, brush over everything like that. All right, so when you've done that, all you need to do now is click play on the action, and then it will resume. So in a few moments, there's going to be the next pop-up window, okay, where you would just have to do a bit more brushing. Okay, so here's the message here. So again, I won't read this, I'm just going to click stop and then show you what to do. So click stop, okay, so now you can see that the drips have formed around the edges. Now this step here, what you want to do is start brushing around your photo, which will reveal these soft sort of background strokes, okay, just like that. Alright, so that's all you need to do. So when you've done that, again, just click play on the action and then it will resume and complete. Alright, so I'll just fast forward the video and I'll get to the result. Alright, so the action's just finished playing back and there's the result. Alright, so what you want to do here is, after the action's complete, you just want to scroll back up to the Impressionist action, just click on this arrow which will just minimize it. Alright, okay. Now let's jump into the, I'm just going to collapse the actions panel for a second, and we're going to jump into the layer panel here. So you'll notice that the Impressionist folder is selected, okay, and if you scroll down here through the layers, you can see there's a lot of layers. Now what you want to do, and you want to do this with pretty much every action you use, is to quickly collapse all these folders that are open. And to do that, you just hold down Control Alt or Command Option and click on this arrow next to the folder icon, click on that, then release the keys, then click on it again, and then the folders are all collapsed. Alright, so firstly, I'm going to jump down to these two folders here, okay? So if this is the style that you wanted, where a part of your image is isolated with these drips and this background texture, then these two folders here will be of interest to you. So this one here, we have the texture edge paint drip. So if you turn it off, that's the paint drips, okay? And if you go inside this folder, there are 6 different types of paint drips. So you can see those there. You can turn them on one by one, okay? And we have this one here called the background texture, okay? So there it is there, all right? Now, if I select the mask here and hold down Alt or Option and click on it, so that is the area in the second part of the action where it stopped and you brushed the background details. That is the area that you brushed, Alright, now if you wanted to brush some more, all you need to do is hit B, okay, that'll access the brush tool. Now whenever you hit B after this action is complete, I've already selected an appropriate brush for you to use in this action, so just hit B, and if you select the mask here, okay, and make sure white is my active color, if we brush into a mask with white, it's going to reveal whatever is inside that folder. Black will hide it, okay, so if I select the mask, white's my active color, and start brushing, you can see here that I can start revealing some extra details. Now if I hit X, that will flip it to black, so you can see if I hit X there, it flips it from black to white. So black, then I can then hide some of those details like that. Now another thing about this folder is that the folder opacity is at 30%, so if you increase this opacity, so if you just click on that word opacity, click, hold and drag to the right, that will increase the opacity there, okay? Alright, and if you go inside this folder, there are 4 different layers here, okay? You can turn those on and off if you want. You can reorder them, just drag them around, just like that. Now, if you want to change the background color, just select this layer here, background color, double click on this white box, and then you can choose a new color. You can also just hover your mouse around the image and you can click on colors from your photo and it will sample colors there, okay? If you want a transparent background, just hide the background color layer, then hide the background layer here, okay? And then you'll see that your design has a transparent background, so you can save that out as a PNG. Okay, so that's those 2 folders covered. Now, what if we just want to quickly fill our entire image with this style, not have it isolated? All you need to do is go to this folder here. You can see it's called main effect layers. So if I turn that off, okay, that's sort of the main effect it's hiding. You can see that we're left with the drips and the background texture. So if you want to quickly fill in your entire design, all you need to do is hold down Shift and click on the mask, okay? And what that does, it just temporarily disables it, okay? You can see a big red X through that. So the good thing about disabling it is that you can just click on it again to release it, and you can come back to that other style that you might prefer. So you can work, in this style, covering the whole image, and then maybe you decide to go back to this other style, you can just release the mask, okay? And again, if I go inside this mask by holding down Alt or Option and clicking on it, you can see that first part of the action where we revealed the area, okay, that's the area there in white, all right? So let's go inside, let's disable the mask and we'll work with the entire photo. So let's go inside the main effects layers folder, because this is the main folder that you want to work with. So if you twirl that open, okay, we've got a bunch of layers here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump around the order a bit here, okay? So the first one that you might be interested in is the paint drips, okay, in yellow, yeah? So if you turn this folder off, okay, you might not want the paint drips at all you need to do is turn it off, okay? Now, what we also have up here is paint splatter. You can see all this splatter here that will just appear in random areas in your photo. You can turn that off if you don't want that. Okay, so if you just want the brush strokes, turn those 2 folders off, okay? We also have this folder here called line patterns that by default is turned off. So if you just turn that on, what that'll do, it creates this pattern throughout certain areas of your photo. And if you go inside this folder, it's pretty simple setup. We just have the lines pattern layer and the lines color. So you can just double click on this box and change the color of those lines if you want. All right. So let's go back to the paint drips folder. All right. And if you twirl that open, there are 15 different styles of paint drips here. Okay. Now, by default, I've just got them all turned on, so you probably think there might be a bit too many. All you need to do is just turn a bunch off if you don't want, and that will reduce the count, just like that. Okay. Now, what you might notice as well is that the drips tend to fall behind these smaller paint strokes here. So you can see this drip here, how it runs behind these paint strokes. All right, so I'll show you what's doing that. So we have this folder here called Photo Definition Paint Strokes. So if I turn that off, okay, you can see that the photo loses a lot of its definition. All right, so I'll turn that back on. It's because these paint drips are sitting below if I go inside this folder here, we have two different layers, and they are the definition layers. Okay, see those there. So the paint strips are sitting below. So if I drag this folder on top of the definition paint strokes, you'll see that the paint strokes then sit on top. Okay, so undo and redo that, you can see the difference. So by default, I've got them sitting below, just so that the definition of your photo comes through. But if you want them above, you can just drag them above. What you can also do is just maybe drag some individual ones up. So let's just say if I grab Paint Strips 3, if I hold down Alt or Option, and I click, hold and drag that above this blue folder, that's just going to make a copy. Okay, I'll undo and redo that. But that one particular style of paint strip is going to sit on top of the definition stroke. So I'll grab these three, I'll drag those up. Okay, you can see now they sit on top. All right, and you can just experiment with maybe which ones look the best. So hold Alt or Option, drag up. If that looks no good, just hit Control Command Z to undo that. Okay, and then just work your way around. Okay, now what you might also want to do with the paint strips is just brush on where you want them to appear. Maybe you don't want them spread evenly across your photo. Maybe you just want it on the background, okay, and not on his face, just in this background area here. So what you can do is if you select the mask of the paint strips folder, what we want to do is fill that mask in black because we want to hide everything that's in the folder, okay? So make sure black is your active color. If it's not, just hit X a few times and then make sure black is at the foreground, okay? And the shortcut keys to fill in a mask with the foreground color here is Alt backspace or Option backspace. So if you hit that while the mask is selected, make sure it's selected, okay? It's going to fill it black, okay? So you can see now that it's hidden all the paint strokes. So what I can do now is just hit B and just remember that I've already selected the brush for you. So what I want to do now is make sure white is my active color because I want to start revealing what's inside this folder. So black's currently active, so I hit X, make white active, and I start brushing now. You can see I can start revealing those paint drips just where I want it. So around the edges here, okay? And as you're brushing, to change the brush size, you just use the left and right square brackets, okay? So let's just say this one gray brush stroke here I don't want, all right? I'm gonna hit X, make sure black is active. I can brush that away. Hit X again, I can start brushing it back on if I want, because white's active, black, white, okay? So as you're brushing, just have your finger on X, okay? All right, so that's looking pretty good. All right, next let's talk about these two layers here in red. Okay, so we've got this layer here called Reveal Normal Photo, and I've got in brackets here, Brush Mask. Okay, so whenever I've got this hint here saying Brush Mask, I'm just reminding you that to reveal this layer or, adjust this layer through its mask, okay? So currently, if I turn this layer on and off, it does nothing. It's because it's hidden. You can see the mask is completely black. So remember that black hides everything on this layer or inside a folder. So if I hold down Shift to just temporarily disable the mask, you can see all this layer here it's just our original photo, okay? And so there might be an instance where you want, say, his face to be the original photo and the rest is sort of blends into these effects. So what I can do here is just select the mask, hit B, make sure white's active because I want to reveal it. And if I start brushing here, I can start revealing the original photo, okay? So there might be a situation where you want that effect, so that's how you do it, okay? And there might be, so I feel like black, maybe you want more definition in the eyes, okay? You can sort of just brush those on, just in the eyes, like that. And what you can do then is you can lower the opacity of this layer. So if I adjust this opacity to 0 and 100, and then go from 100 back down, I can start, creating a better blend between the original photo there and the effect details, okay? So lower that down a bit. All right, so this one here, photo edge details, I've got a bracket here, brush mask. So again, I'm just going to hold down Shift and click on this mask to disable it. So what this does, it just creates outlines, okay, around the details of your photo. Okay, so there might be an area where you want that kind of effect. Let's just say if you want those outlines around his ears, around there, okay. So, and just hold down Shift and click on it to preview where those extra details are in your photo, then release it, So it's just getting a quick preview of where you might want to brush those details on. But these two are completely optional, okay? You might not need them at all. I'm just going to leave them off for the moment, okay? Go back up to the paint splatter folder here. Might turn that back on. This setup's pretty simple. There are 6 different paint splatter layers here. You can play around with those. Okay, let's now jump down to this folder here, vertical paint strokes. Now, if I just drag this folder up above the photo definition layers here, actually I might just drag it all the way to the top, you can see that all it is, if I go inside the folder, we have 15 different styles of paint strokes here, and yeah, they're all vertical, and their colors slightly vary from the original colors of your photo, and so that sits below, underneath the photo definition paint strokes. Okay, so you can see this slight difference in color running through his face here. That's coming from this folder here, the vertical paint strokes. Okay, now we have these 2 layers here. Well, all these ones here in gray. Okay, and I've just called these random paint strokes 1 through to 9. Okay, and you can see if I turn them on and off, they just, if I turn this off here, okay, these layers here try to follow the contours of your photo as best as possible, and they angle the brush stroke in that direction. Okay, now I've put the larger paint strokes down the bottom here. You can sort of see from the thumbnails they're quite big and patchy, and they kind of get smaller as they go up. This one here is a bit of an exception. I made this one a bit bigger, sit it on top. Okay, so what you can do here is just experiment with moving these layers around. So currently I've got the vertical paint strokes here. If I move this, say, down below here, you'll see that the image completely changes. Now, what I like to do here, I can drag this up to the top. If I hold down Control and use the left and right square brackets, I can move that folder up and down. The good thing about that is that I can look at the image while moving this folder down to get an idea of, if it looks better in a different position, this folder. So you can see that there. Okay, so Control or Command, left and right square brackets to quickly move folders or layers up or down. Now, what I'm interested in doing here is I don't like this patch of paint here around his eyes. It's a bit distracting, and this might happen in some photos where you run the action and there's like a paint stroke that's over someone's eye, or just one that you don't want there. Now, what you want to do is just quickly identify by turning the layers on and off which one is affecting it. Okay, so I can see here that this paint strokes, vertical paint strokes folder, it's coming from in here. Okay, so the 2 options here, I can either select the mask on this folder, okay, and brush black. So I'm hitting B, make sure black's out, and brush that away. Okay, so that'll just remove that. Or I can go inside the folder here and then just turn off a bunch of these and start figuring, then turn them back on, and then just see which one it is. So it's this one here, vertical paint stroke 6. So I'll turn that off for a moment. I'll turn all these back on, and then I'll just turn that on. Okay, I'm just going to brush black onto this layer here. Okay. Now the same applies here for say this area here. I don't like this paint stroke. Let's turn off the vertical font, so it's coming inside here again. What I might do is just quickly brush onto the folder mask here and just brush that away. Okay. Now something else I like to do with all these paint stroke layers is experiment with moving them above the photo definition paint strokes folder. So just a reminder, yeah, all these layers here sit below these definition strokes. Okay, so you can see that there. All right, so what I like to do is just experiment with copying some of these and moving them above. So what I'll do, I'll just hold down Alt or Option and I'll drag that up, make a copy, and you'll see that one style of vertical paint stroke now sits above those definition strokes. So you can see those there. And so it's a bit of trial and error. What I like to do is just grab one, move it up. Do I like those paint strokes? Not really that one. And I'll just keep moving down and trial them. So that one looks good. Maybe I'll just grab a bunch and I'll move them up. Okay, that looks pretty good. I don't like the one around the nose, so I'll just identify, whoops, it's that one there. So I'll just brush onto the mask here and brush that away. Okay, so you can just keep doing that with any one of these. Just experiment with moving them up. Okay, try that one. You've already done that one. Okay, so you get the point there. Now, I might just get rid of this green one here, so I'll identify where that one's coming from. This one here, so I'm going to brush that away. Okay, now I usually add options to quickly change colors of layers, and I didn't with this one because the point of this this action, especially when experimenting with the layers, is to move them around consistently to see what different kind of results you get. Okay, now if I say added an option, a color option above this, so I'm just going to create a solid color layer here, make it red, and I hold down Alt option, clip it to that. So you can see if I had an option to change the color here, and if I click on this layer here and then move it around, it's not going to take that red layer with it. So you'd have to hold down Shift and move these pairs of layers around. And you can imagine that if every one of these layers here had a color option, it would get really messy. So a quick way to quickly change the colors is if you just hold down Control U or Command U. Okay, that will bring up the hue and saturation window here. And what you can do is just drag this hue window around. Okay, so you can individually change the color of any one of these layers here. Okay, and you can play around with the saturation here. Maybe you want it black and white or the lightness. Okay, or you could hit this button here, colorize, and what that'll do, it'll fill it with a solid color. Okay, so sometimes what I like to do with this action is just hit Control U and just alter the color a little bit, maybe like that. Grab another one, Control U. Okay, so you can see how this is working. I can go into the vertical paint strokes, grab one here, Control U. Okay, and again, just a reminder about masks. So let's make this a bit green like that. Let's just say I like that, don't like that bit around the nose. So I can, what I actually might do here is if that happens, if you're changing the colors and you like, say around the edges here but not his nose, it might be better to create an adjustment layer, right? So we can use the mask on that adjustment layer to erase that area. So to do that, you click on this icon, so we'll create this hue and saturation, right? I'll just minimize that. So you can see it here. So what I want to do, I want to clip it to this layer below, okay? So that it only affects the layer below. So currently if I adjust this hue and saturation slider, it's going to affect all these layers below, right? But if I hold down Alt option and move my mouse between these two layers, you get that square and arrow icon. Click on that and it will clip it to this layer below. So now, let's go back to that green tone, right? So now I can select the mask, hit B, make sure black's active, and then I just brush that hue and saturation away from his nose, right? So it's not, so if I increase the saturation, so you can see now it's not affecting his nose. Next, let's jump back up to the photo definition paint strokes folder here. So let's just say there is some definition that you don't want. Let's just say around his hand here, I don't want that definition there. Again, just use the mask, just hit B, make sure black is foreground color, and then start brushing that away, and you'll see that it loses a lot of definition. So if I start brushing over his face here, okay, you can remove definition where you want. And the same can apply to the lines pattern folder. I can turn that on, and then I can be selective of where I want this pattern to appear through the mask. Select the mask, hit B, make sure black's active, and I can start hiding where I don't want those lines to appear. Okay. So next, let's talk about this folder here called color options. So I'm just going to collapse the main effects layer folder here. And if you twirl this folder open, I've set up 30 different color options here. And the way these work is that you just need to click on the visibility for that folder, okay? And it will apply a different color tone, all right? Now, what you can do with these is that you don't need to use the color at 100% opacity. So you can select the folder and then you can adjust the opacity here of that folder, okay? So maybe you only want 26% of that layer. You can turn on another one and then, you know, use 44% of that layer. So if I turn the color options folder on and off now, you can see it's applied that new color tone. All right, so you can keep doing that. You can just go down here, turn them on, okay? Maybe you just want, might not want any of this one actually. No, because that's just desaturating a bit. But you can just go up and down here and just apply maybe a little bit of that one. Okay. Now, something else that I like to do with color is if you go down to this icon here, and if you click on color lookup, all right, you get this window that pops up here. Now, under this, if you click on this top drop down menu, okay, and if you click on toStrip.look, okay, what you can do then is then just use the down arrow, and there are a bunch of other color options hidden in here, okay, and the same applies here, is that you can, let's just say I want a little bit of this color, okay, I'll try the opacity to 0, and I'll use a bit of that. What I like to do then is I'll just duplicate that layer. Okay, so there's the color lookup layer it's just created. I'll duplicate that. I'll set the opacity back to 100, and I'll double click on it, and then I'll look for another color that I might like. So maybe I want to use a little bit of this, so I'll bring the opacity to 0, and I'll increase that a bit, 60%. I'll duplicate it, Control J, and I'll look for another color. Maybe a little bit of this one. Okay, I'll duplicate it again. I'll just keep going through them. There's just a few more to go. Will I use any of this? No, I don't think so. Okay, I think that'll do. So I'm just going to shift select these, Control or Command G to group those. I can turn that on and off. You can see the before and after. And what I like to also do is maybe I don't want to use this group of layers at 100% opacity. Right, so I'll just select the group and I'll just drag that back to 0% opacity, and I'm going to slowly drag to the right to increase the opacity of the folder. So I'm just blending between the original colors before I added those layers and then after. So let's just increase that. Maybe I just want to use 60% of the colors inside this folder. Okay, so remember that that's another option, is down the bottom here, color lookup. You can also experiment with these abstract ones here. There's just a few there. Just use the down arrow. Excuse me. And what you can also experiment with is, let's just say, let's go back up to this one. Say you like this one. What you can do is just put a hue and saturation layer above that. Okay, and then you can, adjust those colors there by just moving this handle around. Right. Let's delete that. Now, lastly, after you've experimented with moving all these layers around, what you might want to do is just sharpen up your image a bit. So if you open the Actions panel again, click on this play icon, it'll appear here. If you just select the Sharpen Result action and click play, what that'll do, it will just create this layer at the top here called Sharpened Result. And it might be a bit hard to see from the tutorial, from the video there, but what that's doing, it's just going over your entire image and adding some sharpening to it. Okay, so that option is there, and you can adjust the opacity of this layer to increase the sharpening, or you can lower it down. By default, it's at 70%. So next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to run the action again on this photo, and when we get to that first step of revealing your design, I will show you a quick way to quickly reveal your entire photo rather than having to brush on where you want it to appear. That's just if you're not interested in that isolated look, so this look here. Okay, I'll show you a quick way to do that. Now, it's important that if you want to run the action again on the same photo, you must close it and then reopen the photo. So I'm just going to close this and I'm going to reopen it. Okay, you'll run into errors if you just delete all the layers and then run the action again. Okay, so it's important, close it and then reopen the photo. Okay, I need to check the image size again. Put this back up. Okay, I'm going to run the action and I'll fast forward to that first pop-up window. Alright, so here's that first step of revealing your image. So you click stop. So let's just say that I quickly want to reveal my entire photo. I'm not interested in that isolated look. All you need to do is, you see that this base strokes folder, the mask is selected. Okay, all you need to do is hold down shift and click on that mask to disable it, and then that's it. You see the entire photo was revealed, and then all I need to do then is click play. Okay, now I'll fast forward it to, or that next pop-up window is actually going to show up in a sec, so I'll just wait for that. Okay, so here's the next step. Now you click stop here. So you remember that the second step was to reveal those extra background paint strokes. Now because there's no room for those paint strokes to appear, all you need to do is click play and then that's it. And then the action will run through to the end. All right. So lastly, what I want to talk about is adding in text to your design. It's very simple. If you just hit T, that will access the text tool, and you're going to create a new layer at the front here. Control Shift N or Command Shift N to create a new layer. Hit T. Now if I start, if I click anywhere in my photo, I can type out Impressionist and Control or Command T to scale. If you hold down Shift while clicking and dragging on these corners, you'll scale uniformly. Alright, so I can scale that up. Now, one of the benefits of having all these different layers, if you've gone to the main effects folder, all these different paint stroke layers, you can move your text in amongst these layers and the texture will sit on top. So the text then adopts this cool texture overlay. And what you can do is holding down Control left square bracket or Command left square bracket, you can move that text up and down the layer order. So you can see as I move it down, it starts to sink behind all the textures. But you can do things like, you know, having the paint drip sit on top of the text. So I'll move that around. You can see that there. So you can add text as a cool element as well. So I can hold down Alt option and drag it up, make a copy, and then I'll maybe just scale it up, make it really big. You know, you can move that around and have that as part of the design. Hit T, you can color pick a different color here. So you can see, and then you can experiment as well with blend modes. So selecting the layer, changing it to say soft light, or just scrolling through it, maybe lighten might be better. Scrolling down through the blend modes here. But it's probably best to just keep it at normal and move it in and around these layers here. It's pretty cool. Alright, let's just compare this design against our original photo. So let's zoom out a bit. So there's the original photo and there's the Impressionist action. Alright guys, that is it. That covers everything. If you're having issues with the action, just make sure you double check your file setup, okay? Action file setups can vary from action to action, so it might even be a good idea to just write down in a notepad or something, or just the instructions, the setup instructions for each action that you use, just for quick reference. Okay, I'll also put a link down to my support page below. If you're having any issues, have a read through that page. You can contact my contact address is on that page as well. Okay, so I'll be in touch if you've got any issues. But if not, have a good time using the action. Just remember to experiment with moving all these layers around. Turn off folders if you don't want them. If you don't want the paint splatter, turn it off. If you want to hide out portions of paint strokes, use the mask. Okay? Alright guys, I'll see you soon.